speaking of the experts, Frank Seravalli is an expert. Let's bring in our daily Faceoff Insider Frank Seravalli to the show. Frank, we had a hot debate in the YouTube chat off the beginning of the show today. Would love your take. I made a roast beef sandwich for lunch. I said roast beef is the best of the deli meats, and the chat said I'm crazy. Agree or disagree?
Disagree. It depends. Sometimes you get a really tough and chewy roast beef, and it has to be cooked appropriately. So I'm going to go with like a hand-carved turkey sandwich.
Ooh. Turkey was getting some love. Someone said Chipotle turkey in the chat.
Yeah, that'll work.
That'll work. Frank, McDavid out 2 to 3 weeks. I think Bagged Milk had a line that he said, worse than I had hoped for, better than I had feared. Whereas at least we're talking weeks, not months, but 2 to 3 weeks without McDavid, still not great for a team that's under 500.
I think this is the best possible outcome you could have. I mean, the only thing better than this is like, okay, McDavid misses one game on Thursday and he's back on the weekend. Yeah. Looking at that crash into the boards, that could have been a million things. That could have been a ligament tear. It could have been a dislocation. It could have been a fracture. It could have been whatever you want it to be. Or I guess in this case, don't want it to be. And the fact that it's a relatively minor sprain, the other part of the high ankle issue is it could be 6 to 8 weeks and it could linger all season long. Like, this is by far the best outcome I think the Oilers could have reasonably hoped for given what happened. And now it's on everyone else. It should have been on everyone else. There should have been some urgency on Monday night in Columbus when he went out of the lineup. Instead, they were more nervous than Liam sitting on his couch, fretting about this injury because that's the way they played.
Liam didn't sleep for 2 nights. I was getting really worried about you, buddy.
I've just been refreshing your Twitter, Frank, waiting.
I bet you I'm on Liam's mute list.
No, you're one of the very few that has post notifications. You and Adam Schefter. So there you go.
That's like the biggest accolade of my career to date, I think. I feel honored by that. Liam hates everyone, likes Frank. Okay, all right.
And Adam Schefter.
That's the headline.
Let's talk. What you just sort of touched on was kind of the rant I did earlier on in the show, which was like the Oilers have been fighting the you're a one-player team allegations for a while now. And listen, you don't get to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final by being a one-player team. But I really do think every guy in that room, whether it's Hyman or Draisaitl, all the way down to the new guys, Arvidsson, Skinner, they should be sitting there going, man, this is our chance to show to the rest of the league that we are more than Connor McDavid, and we, collective, are a Stanley Cup contender.
I would doubt that even enters their mind. Like, I don't think that anyone honestly looks at this Edmonton team and says that they are a one-player team. That's just my personal opinion. Are there different holes at varying points on this roster? For certain. And you could make the argument on the back end, but one-player team, I mean, that is a 2017 indictment. That's not the 2024-25 Edmonton Oilers. It just isn't. It's not even close.
Yeah, I mean, there are still people who I shouldn't even say qualified opinions that say it, but it is still a thing.
What, so people from Toronto, like, I mean, who are we referencing here? Like, who would even say like,
all playoffs?
That's nonsense, utter nonsense.
Okay.
The Oilers obviously called up Philp, but the other one they called it was Drake Caggiula. What do you think that says about what they think about that bottom 6 right now? Because they would have been under the cap if they had just called up Philp and could have kept accruing, right? If I'm correct. They called up 2 guys.
That is correct. So my understanding is Derek Ryan is the guy that's coming out of the lineup. And I think it's more of an indictment on one player singularly as opposed to the bottom 6 collectively. I think there's a real question mark as to how much Derek Ryan has left in the tank. And also probably not an incredible shock. I mean, think about what the conversation was like at the end of training camp. I mean, Philp almost straight up beat him out, and probably on merit did beat him out of a spot when it comes to earning that opening night lineup spot. And yet Ryan is there because of if it's waivers or if it's cap reasons, whatever you want to call it. Certainly he's the guy that ended up sticking. Experience, veteran play, whatever you want to call it. But now playtime's over. It's go time, and the Oilers need the best roster that they can assemble. I'm not 100% sold that Caggiula is it, but I have zero doubt in my mind that this team is better with Noah Philp in the lineup than without him.
Yeah, like my take coming out of training camp was like, I do think Philp was the better player, but Ryan as the veteran and call him the incumbent, he didn't play bad enough to lose his job. Like I actually think Derek Ryan was good through the preseason, and also Philp hadn't played hockey in a calendar year at that point. Like I agreed with, hey, send him down, let him play 18 to 20 minutes. And now my take on it and my prediction is I don't think Noah Philp's going to go back down, Frank. I think the Oilers truly found a diamond in the rough. And I know I come with some bias there with the U of A side of things, but like 6'3", shoots well, skates well, thinks the game well, checks all these boxes, is good in the dot, right-handed shot, which the Oilers need. Like he just checks too many boxes to not stick with this team.
I agree. And the incumbent, what that gets you is 1/8 of the season to start out and to show it that you can stay and continue to produce. Philp, the time is right for a change, I think, at least to test it out. And I mean, for all the reasons you mentioned, I agree. To me, it's probably one of the most shocking roster movement things that we've seen in the NHL in a long time. Like you mentioned some of the backstory, but this isn't just nearly making the San Jose Sharks out of training camp. This is nearly making the Stanley Cup contender favorite, and having played such little hockey over the past couple calendar years. Who does that? Who has an unbelievable summer like that, somehow improves their skating stride as Bruce Kurlock has detailed on Oilers Nation, beats out established incumbent veterans, and also happens to shoot with the hand that the Oilers desperately need in the middle at the bottom half of their lineup. It's like, it's an unbelievable story. It's like, honestly, it's bordering, if you are an NFL fan or a history buff, or if you've seen the Disney movie, like it borders on Invincible with Vince Papale, like literally going to Eagles games as a fan and making the team and playing a few years in the NFL. That's the type of ridiculousness that this story is.
I was going through some of my old tweets the other day. Again, like I called his games with the Golden Bears. He missed the entire regular season, his last year with the team, came in the first playoff game, and in the first 20 minutes and 30 seconds of game time, he had 4 points, and the Golden Bears were up 4-1. Like it's crazy what this guy's done. Also, I want to give some love to a few things in our chat because they're hilarious. Derek Ryan, sunshine and Cali, baby, no more Edmonton. So he's maybe looking forward to the waivers. And there was a very good joke in here from McHigh and Dry about to see Noah's Ark, but then Noah's player arc. That's clever.
That's See what clever. You did there.
Last week we asked you about the league-wide perception of Stuart Skinner, and as much as internally I am rolling my eyes asking you this question, I want to do the same thing about Darnell.
Please don't create a headline for me again. That headline the next day was brutal, but go ahead.
What is the league-wide? Because like it's divisive in the fan base. It's reached the point where like even the call it lowest common denominator Oilers fans, like people who go to 5 games a year and maybe watch 30, they know Nurse has a bad contract and I can yell about that. And it's just like, it's such low-hanging fruit. Is he as big of a problem as this fan base makes him out to be? And we won't clip this, we promise.
Bigger. I think he is. Here's the situation as I see it. You have a $9.25 million player locked up for the foreseeable future at a time when you now need to give really expensive next contracts out, starting with Draisaitl kicking in, then eventually McDavid plus Bouchard, and at some point in time, Stuart Skinner. And he can't carry his own pair. You're not asking him to dominate the defense or, carry your team on his shoulders on the back end. Evan Bouchard's already that guy, and he's been that guy for a little while now. Is that too much to ask to just steady your own pair and carry that? He hasn't shown that he's been capable of doing it for more than like 10 months now. So is it as big a problem as what you're saying? I think it's worse. It's the worst possible, to me, it's the worst possible conundrum you can find yourself in. Nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, and no signs of improvement. Am I being hyperbolic?
No, you're not. And maybe it's just blind faith for me, but I just think back to the player we saw in the Canadian division here, which I now know is 3 years in the past. Like,
dude, it is never coming back. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it's time I have to stop thinking that it magically will. So you don't buy, just to end this conversation, you don't buy any stock into and I know because he's 9.25, but he's never going to be 9.25. I totally understand that. But
that's because that deal was signed at one moment in time. So I don't even, again, no one's holding that against him. Like, dude, get the bag. Like seriously, it's not, no one's criticizing him for that. And I don't think even anyone's all over the Oilers, because look at the other deals that were signed at that period of time. It was 3 guys in 1 3-week stretch in the summer that rewrote the defense market that isn't going to see it get to that number for a long time.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. All good. Park that in the past. It's the way that his game has devolved for me, not evolved, that is the most troubling. It's the decision-making process. It's the lack of foot speed. It's the awareness. It's all these things that get piled into one. It'd be one thing if the conversation was, again, not, we don't need you to carry us. The simple bar has been set for Darnell Nurse is, please don't hurt us. And for too long now, he's been hurting.
By the way, the chat was loving your answer. Chili Yeg is in, our boy from down in Houston. Loving the honest takes from Frank.
Oh, not that one.
Yeah, we didn't want to show that one. Utah went out and got Ollie Mata, and you made a comment today on DFO Live. You're like, hey, why don't you go look at getting Timothy Liljegren? Is that a guy, if you're Stan Bowman right now and you're watching, like, again, Travis Dermott's back in the top 4 right now. I have not liked what I've seen from Dermott. Emberson is off to a slower start than I had hoped for. Stetcher is exactly what Troy Stetcher has always been. Is Liljegren enough of a needle mover for Edmonton to make that their move right now? Or are we just going to have to do what I'm doing right now? Sit on my hands and just play the patient game?
I don't think that's the answer. I mean, if you're the Oilers, you can't do this next acquisition because we've talked about the idea that this might be the only one you get to make. It can't be on a hope and a wish and a prayer. And that's all that Timothy Liljegren would be right now. If you're Utah, that's a different story. You're looking for someone to play above their head. You're looking for someone that might fit your age scheme. The Oilers, even from a cap perspective, 3 years, if he was maybe in the last year of his deal, I could see maybe taking a flyer and saying, can this guy find a way to get back to a level that he was previously at? He's had a crisis of confidence. At that point, like, not to bring this up again, but like, why wouldn't you have just matched on Philip Broberg, and at least if you're going to play the hope game, play it on a guy you know? That's my thought process. And from a Utah perspective, like, Ollie Mata is what he is. 15 minutes a night, third pair guy. But if you're trading a 3rd round pick, and not to say 3rd round pick matters much to a team that can't even sign all their picks, why not? If you're going to take the bat off your shoulder, why not swing? Like, Ollie Mata is not a swing. That's a bunt.
Fair. All right. You had a really good piece up at dailyfaceoff.com about franchise valuations in the NFL and in the NHL. And some of the numbers you shared are absolutely just jaw dropping. Like the Tampa Bay Lightning, being sold a couple or 11, 12 years ago for 100 million. Now they're worth 1.8 billion. It's crazy stuff. But the other thing you've done is interview Connor Bedard, and that is up now on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We're going to put links to both those in the description of today's episode so people can go check them out after. But give me, maybe without ruining a big part of the interview, give me something you learned about Connor Bedard in your conversation with him.
Well, he's not really into many things other than hockey. So that part is a challenge. We talked a little bit about football. He's become an NFL fan, and he's actually pretty decent at fantasy football. But short of that, like when I went around the Hawks dressing room and I was like, hey, Nick Foligno, like, what can I, they sit right next to each other. What can I talk to Connor Bedard about today? And he looks at me, he's like, good luck. And then you talk to Pat Maroon, and you're like, hey, what's Connor Bedard into? He's like, oh, beats me, man. Like, I have no idea. No one does. No one knows. If you find out, can you tell me? And so I kind of went into it being like, oh man, like this could kind of be like pulling teeth. Like, how do you, first off, how do you relate to a 19-year-old that's just on a totally different level than everyone else? And second, how do I draw that out of him with a camera, a couple cameras and a bunch of lights around? So my approach was a little bit different. Like, hey, let's talk hockey, but let me see if I can peel back a layer for everyone on how this incredibly elite thinker goes around the ice and processes the game. And so that was my approach. I think we were able to do that. And you can actually like get a sense of his problem solving abilities and the way that he even approaches training. Like it's really fascinating. So hope you'll give it a listen, and feel free to grade me on the interview too.
It is up on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. It is also available wherever you get your podcast from. Find it by looking up Frankly Speaking. Every week, Frank Seravalli joins us, usually on Wednesdays. This one was a good one, Frank. Thanks for popping in.
See you guys.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.